It's time for the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast.
All right, welcome back. Pleased to be joined now by Rob Carlin, the former host of Caps Pre and Postgame Live on NBC Sports Washington. Rob, it's been a while, sir, since the last time we've seen each other. How you been?
Not too bad, man. You know, staying inside my house as much as I can, spending a lot of time with my kids, co-teaching third grade. But all in all, not too bad. How have you been?
Oh man, I'm telling you what, it's been a grind, but with this podcast, it brings me like a sense of normalcy because, like, with all that's going on in this world, it's like, what a better way to forget about everything in life than to talk about what you love. And for me, it's sports. And I know, I don't know if you knew this, but when we first met at MedStar, I was like, this man is great. And I've watched you before I've even met you. And I was like, this man is like my inspiration. One of the many people who have driven me in sort of a way to just produce better and better content all the time.
Well, I appreciate that, and it means the world to me because I'm like you, just a huge sports fan, and I was lucky enough to actually live out my dream job for a long time. So that means a lot, and thank you very much for saying that.
So co-teaching third grade.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have twin daughters that are in third grade and they're home and I'm home. So, you try and get some work done during the day and every 5 minutes it's Daddy, can you spell this? Daddy, what's 65 and 43 add up to? I'm like, well, you're supposed to be adding those numbers, not me. So yeah. It's just a constant barrage of questions. And then, can I have a snack? Can I have juice? Can I have another snack? Can I have another snack and another? So, it's my wife works, so she doesn't have to go into the office a lot, but there are days that she does have to go in. So I'm doing a lot of daddy daycare these days.
Well, that's awesome. And along with that, you started up your own podcast. Can you talk a little bit about that for us?
Yeah, it's the Capitol Building Podcast. I was lucky enough to get together with Blue Wire Podcast, which is a really exciting new company. And they have I think they have like 130 or so podcasts in their library. And the guy who runs it is actually from Northern Virginia. So he knew who I was through Caps coverage. And it was right after I had, been laid off from my job. And I, kind of like you, I just wanted to still be talking Caps. Like it only feels natural. I did it for the last 9 years of my life. And I thought, I still have opinions that I think people want to hear, lucky enough. So I started the podcast and it's going pretty well. It's a lot of fun to do. Keeps me around the team from a distance, obviously not like it used to be, but yeah, it's just, like I said, it's just fun to keep talking about Caps as long as I can. And as long as I'm getting positive response, whether it's on the comment section of the website of the actual podcast, or it's people on Twitter who have really gone out of their way to say really nice things. And just like hearing it from you, it all means the world to me. So yeah, we'll keep doing it and, until no one wants to hear it anymore.
Yeah. So the Capitol Building Podcast, you can check him out over there. Rob, once again, creating great work. You can find this segment on the Kirby on Sports YouTube page as well. Big thanks to our sponsors before we move forward. PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, and Chief Graphics. A lot to get into here. With this whole pandemic, we all know about the pandemic, but a 56 game regular season, it's kicked off. We're pretty much in full swing. There, like, for the first time, teams are playing like back to back. It's sort of like baseball in a way. So as a whole, Rob, I sort of want to get your thoughts on what you have made out of this season so far as it has progressed so far. Probably like differential in gameplay and stuff. Have you seen different sort of strategies being used because these teams are playing back to backs a lot?
I haven't seen different strategies as much as I've just seen a little bit of the there's carryover now. It feels more like like an early round playoff series because you don't feel that pressure of, playing for a cup, but you do start to see where one hit in, game one lingers into game two. And for me, that's great. I love that. I mean, I have no problem with that at all. In fact, it feels more authentic than, now all of a sudden I look at the quote unquote regular season and I go, man, these one-offs, it could be weeks, if not months before you see another team. Now they've played the Sabres 4 times already. So, I kind of like it. I'm digging it. I am just really of the belief, and, I see all these, look, as games are getting canceled and it's happening in the NBA and it happened in baseball. And especially when it was starting to happen in baseball, everyone was like, all right, clearly this is a joke. They need to just shut it down. And no, we're figuring this out as we go along. We are dealing with this pandemic. And I think it's smart to just put your head down, do the best you can, deal with games that get canceled, reschedule them as quickly as possible. And now the Dallas Stars are playing. And, it's funny because I looked at the Caps and I thought, you could tell it, they didn't have much of a training camp and there's a new staff. They're not quite all there yet. And then I look at Dallas, who gets, a couple of extra weeks of sitting around because of the COVID positive test there. And they come out and just steamroll Nashville 7-0 in their first game. I was like, well, I guess all that time off worked for them. So I like it. It's just great to have hockey on again, night in and night out, and watching all these games. So I'm just a fan of make it work the best way you possibly can, and then figure it out as the season goes along.
So divisional realignment, due to the border shutting down between US and Canada, all the Canadian teams are one division, and other teams they broke it down East, Central, West, sort of
there's sponsorship to those divisions now. You got to make sure you give, right? There's sponsorships to each division now. So
there are.
Oh yeah. They sold the naming rights to each division. So yeah, I forget what they are now. If I was still working, I would obviously have to know them, but oh yeah, each division has a sponsorship now.
A sponsorship.
Yeah, that's right.
That's news to me because I didn't even hear about that.
Oh yeah. If you hear Joe B last night on the game, he called whatever it was. I can't remember exactly which the sponsor is, but yeah, he dropped it in there. They sponsored the names of each division.
Well, now, anyway, right? You look at
they're making their money, man.
I guess so with this pandemic or whatnot. But anyways, the division realignment, you're just playing teams in your division, limiting travel. I mean, for crying out loud, just look at the Caps and Pens. They're playing like 7 or 8 times this year. So a lot of change. I sort of want to get your thoughts about that.
I like it because they're making the best out of this situation. And just think about like the potential for game 5 between the Caps and the Penguins this year, or game 5 between the Islanders and the Caps this year. There's going to get some bad blood going there. There's definitely going to be a questionable hit along the way that you're going to have to answer for, whether it's, the Caps doing it or the other team doing it. And I think it's going to make for great theater. Now, having said that, I think there is going to get a little bit of fatigue of seeing the same team over and over and over again. So, but again, I don't know what they could have done. I don't know what the better answer would have been. So I try not to focus on, what could have been or how this doesn't work. I like to focus on how it is working. And right now it is working for me because every night I turn the TV on, there's 5 different hockey games that I get to watch. So I'm all for, whether it's the Caps early and a Vancouver game late or whatever it is, that I get to double dip like that. So, like I said, I think it's, already I'm bored of the Buffalo Sabres. I've seen more than I care to see of the Sabres for this season, but some of those, great rivalry games when the Flyers and Caps start going, those I'm sure you're going to get up for. And then all of a sudden you're going to look and go, oh my God, Tom Wilson pissed off 4 different guys. Bring it on. Let's play again in 2 nights. Let's go.
Oh man. Yeah, that's definitely something you have to sort of foresee. Like if, like there was a fight one night, does that carry over, so to speak?
And I don't know that there's going to be that much carryover because they don't fight anymore, and they certainly aren't going to like carry it. But I just think there's going to be that extra grabbing and hold, and there's going to be that extra little left jab as they're all in a scrum in front of the net. So it's not like I anticipate guys dropping the gloves and having, just, like a yard sale, and all of a sudden there's gloves and sticks everywhere and everyone's fighting. But I do think that the levels of intensity are going to ramp up so much that every single whistle is going to be pushing and grabbing and clutching and holding, and and look, if you want to do that against Tom Wilson, Ovi, Zdeno Chara, Garnet Hathaway, like, bring it on. There aren't too many teams that are bigger and stronger than the Caps right now. So the other teams do it, but they better think twice, because Zdeno Chara is coming out that door and onto the ice at some point.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to recall. I believe there was some extracurricular activity, as in a fight. I'm not sure if it was with the Caps, but I saw a video of it circulating on Twitter, and somebody quoted, somebody said something like, the fights don't seem as exciting with no fans in the stands.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Everything feels like a little more artificial with no fans, and there's no one banging on the glass and yelling and screaming. Again, they're doing the best they can and all this. I think, at least in TV, we're getting, the noise pumped in through the TV. Yeah. I can't imagine what it's like in those arenas, though.
Oh my gosh.
When it's just deathly quiet in there, other than like the other day, and I forget what goal it was. I think it was the Justin Schultz goal the other day. That started with a thunderous Garnet Hathaway hit that caused a turnover. The puck came around, Schultz throws it on net and in. But I'm thinking, like, that hit would have blown the roof off of the arena and then right into a goal, and it just would have been so loud for such a long period of time. And now there's just like nothing. And then you wait for Wes Johnson to announce that goal, and it's like a dead silent. Yeah, there's part of me that would love to be there. Although I heard Joby and Locker talking about it on TV, and I heard Walton and Kenny Sabrin talking about it on the radio, how freaking cold it is inside the arena, because you take away the body heat of 19,000 people. Yeah, they've all been bitching and moaning about how cold it is inside the arena. So part of me wishes I was there, and part of me is like, no, I don't want to be standing in Arctic weather doing a show.
Yeah, and I think it was that Schultz goal I saw that somebody tweeted, and he made the goal, and it was just a goal horn, and the players just gather around. It was just like, it was like maybe a high school, if there was a high school hockey team, you just shoot the goal and that's it. I mean, it's just a lot more different. And
yeah, it is.
And it's crazy too. I'd like to get your thoughts on this. How do you think these broadcast teams are adapting to calling games off of TV screens in studio?
It's really challenging. I know, like, trying to think what game it was. Brendan Burke from the Islanders tweeted something out. I think it was, oh man, I'm trying to remember. The Islanders, I think it was, scored a goal, and it was the goalie flipped the puck up, and Brendan Burke just said it was cleared, and it actually was a great pass that led to a goal. Was it who did the Caps play the 3-on-5 goal? They gave up a 3-on-5 goal.
That was the Pens.
Was it the Penguins?
Yeah.
So, right. And maybe that was on national TV or something.
Yeah, that was on Sunday.
Right. So that was on national TV, and I think Brendan Burke was calling it, and they dumped the puck out, and he had no idea that there was a guy up there, because he can only see what he can see on his TV screen. So normally his call would have been, something of a building of emotion of look out, he's behind the deep. But he had no idea that there was a guy there until the puck actually landed on his stick. So he tweeted out the next day that, I'm sorry, my emotions didn't match what was happening. I honestly couldn't see the guy until he was coming in. So I think that they're dealing with it. It's not ideal. Joe B, I know, hates it in any games. I know in the playoffs last year when we had to do the same thing, you're just so, there's just something about being there. And the reason why play-by-play guys are up top like that, you can see the whole play develop. Yeah, you could watch everything. You could see something developing behind the play, and guys start pushing and shoving. You can see that. So now you're just closed off to what you can see. So, and I don't know how many people notice this. I notice it because I'm always listening in a different way. A lot of times the broadcasters are a half a second to maybe a full second behind on the play. So I see an opportunity, and then a half second later, you hear the rise of the voice, because from the time it takes to go up and then back down into the living room or the office of whoever's calling it, there is a little bit of a delay.
Yeah.
I think
Just
there
like
are
radio TV delay, if you're trying to hear the radio feed on the TV.
right. There's just always going to be a delay. So, like I said, you have to really be listening for it. But I'm so trained to hear it that way that I can tell when there's a delay, and that kind of stuff bugs the hell out of me. But again, what are you going to do? The guy's calling the game from his living room, so
Yeah.
doing the best they can.
So did you see Courtney Laughlin's podcast where she had Craig explain all his messy boards on the table and Joe B just has one single sheet of paper?
I saw she tweeted the day, like the picture of him with it's like, I remember the first time I went up there, and it's like, did you ever see the movie A Beautiful Mind, when he draws all like these mathematical equations on
Yeah.
like and I seriously, I walked up there, I was like, Locker, what the hell's going on here? It's just, he takes up the whole area with notes and everything's taped down, and then Joe B's got like his one chart that he's holding in his hand, and it's like the Odd Couple, like it just totally, one's like this, perfectly put together, everything has got a folder and everything is right in its place, that's Joe B. And then there's Lockers, ties might be a little bit crooked, he's got notes everywhere, he's got markers out, but that's the beauty of Locker.
Yeah. And I mean, it sucks too in this season because the legend Mike Doc Emmerich is no longer calling games. And that sort of relates to, I saw a YouTube video about Mike Doc Emmerich and how he had his stuff set up. I thought it was pretty well organized, but it reminded me of Locker and how much preparation they put into calling these games. And what a great job they do. Like the finished product, it's a 56 game season, and putting all this together game after game in this shortened season, it's incredible in my opinion.
Yeah, there's so much work that goes into, I don't think people realize how much studying and phone calls and conversations and interviews goes into prep for one game. And you think about if you're playing in a normal schedule, you're playing, hypothetically a Friday night game in Buffalo and a Saturday game back at Capital One Arena against, Calgary. Joe B would have to prepare for that Friday night game and that Saturday game simultaneously, because he can't get back on the flight from Buffalo. And I promise you, not a lot of work is getting done on those flights home. I would imagine there's much more red wine being consumed than any stat reading being consumed. I've flown on these team planes. I know what happens. So you got to be double dipping those, even, Friday, Sunday turnaround. It's so quick. So a lot of it is just, updating stats or whatever, but just reading and calling and getting story ideas and talking to players and getting to the arena early to interview the coaches. And there's so much work that goes into it. And as far as the setup for Doc, the director for NBC Sports actually lives in my neighborhood here in Annapolis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So a lot of like last year's, they were putting that all together. We literally have like a community pool, and he and I would sit by the pool during the summers. They were, as we were the plan was starting to formulate on how they were coming back. And I was like, what's Doc going to do? And he's like, oh man, let me tell you. And he was telling me how they were going to set up his whole, in-house setup there. And I was like, man, the technology is just crazy. They got it where it was almost simultaneous in his house. But early on last year in the playoffs, he was like a full second and a half behind. And but they just worked on it. But they have a budget that they could do a lot of things at NBC Sports.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's ton of work. I got to fill in on one exhibition game last year against Carolina, and that's an exhibition game. So 70% of those kids that played might never play in the NHL again.
Yeah.
So the amount of work I had to do to learn pronunciations and find stories about these kids and research and calling their PR guy down in Carolina, and like little things like broadcasters would totally appreciate. So all these guys are, have names that have 6 vowels in them. And I was just like, how do you pronounce this? On the Carolina team website, they had a button on each player's name, and you click the button and the player would say the name. Like you would hear, like if it was the Caps, it would just be like Alex Ovechkin, Alex Ovechkin. So each player would say their name twice. And I was like, oh, this is the greatest thing I've ever heard. Now I know exactly how to say every player's name. That was like a godsend for me. But yeah, it's a ton of work to prepare.
So let me ask you this, sort of going off on this sidebar still. Did you put in as much preparation as these play-by-play guys for your in-studio role? What was that sort of like?
Oh, tons of research, because it almost wasn't even so much for the pregame show. I was almost more preparing for the game and the postgame show. The pregame show, you know exactly where you're going. So I could write down a note for every thing that we're getting to in the pregame show, because it's so dialed in. But once our pregame show ends and that game starts, now any plot line can come up. You don't know who's going to step up and be a hero that night for either team. You don't know who's going to play into the biggest play of the game or a fight or whatever it is. And then the post-game show is kind of winging it. It's just based on what you saw for the last 2.5 hours. So I would jot down, like I would make a list. I'd index cards. One index card would be game notes. So if the Caps had won 9 of their last 11 against Buffalo at home, if the power play was, 8 of the last 12 they've converted, which is crazy. But, if it was something like that, or the penalty kill has killed off 16 in a row dating back, 5 games, whatever team related stats. And I would take 1 to 2 big index cards full of those stats. Then I would jot down each player. So Alex Ovechkin, 5 or 6 notes on Ovi. And, Ovi was always like, next goal ties Mike Gartner for 7th all time. So you're taking all those. How many, he's got 53 points in 51 career games against Carolina, all those types of notes. 14 goals in his last 7 games, on pace for however many. Nicholas Backstrom, next assist passes Dale Hunter for whatever in the team franchise history. All these notes of every different player, anything that goes on. Now, some players are just not really, Carl Hagelin, no offense to him, not a lot of notes to take because the guy doesn't put up a lot of numbers. But if there is something, you jot something down in there. So and again, that's not for that pregame show, but it was for once the game started. So I had some sort of context of what he's done. And you never know, like you look and you go, oh my God, Carl Hagelin has 9 goals against Buffalo in his career. That's pretty crazy. The most against any team. A little note like that might come up in postgame if the dude scores. Did you know he's got 10 goals now of his however many career goals? So something like that you want to always be prepared for. So I believe in over preparing because you just want to be ready. And B, I love the prep work. Like I love all that studying and stuff like that. I find that fun. So I'm kind of a stat nerd. So I would just go down those rabbit holes. And, I would totally be the guy, like, as I'm researching it, our producer, Ryan Billy, back then, he now produces the actual games, but he was our show producer. And I would just be like, I would be facing this way. Billy's desk was over there. And I'd be like, oh my God, Billy. He's like, what now? I was like, because I would just find some crazy stat and I just yell him out in the newsroom. So yeah, I was a ton of prep work, but that was, if my hardest part of my job is reading up on hockey players, it's not too bad.
I mean, when I started this podcast, I really appreciated like the little things, the behind the scenes look on how a broadcast goes together, because it's like you just watch on TV as a normal fan. It's like, oh man, this job looks easy. It's not easy whatsoever. And
Yeah.
that's what I appreciate about, yeah, seeing the behind the scenes look that I like when I like saw that it took that much more than just a couple of guys sitting around talking before the game and after the game. There's so much more, and that's what I really appreciate about what you all do. So that it's just crazy to see how much prep work goes into it. Like my prep work is probably half. I don't know. I try to do a lot, but it's not enough. And I just keep striving to get better and better and better.
Yeah, no, that's, when I was coming up in the business, and it was more about my presentation on air, but I would always pick out one thing that was bothering me and I'd focus on that one thing and fix it and find a way to, correct that issue. So you're always, you're game filming yourself at that point and trying to get better. But like, as far as like putting a show together, this is different. A podcast, it's yourself and
Yeah.
we're sitting here and it is two guys talking. Now you've prepared, you know where you want to go, and honestly you're doing a good job of sort of letting the conversation go where it's going, but keeping an idea of questions you want to get to. And that's really tough, and that's not an easy thing because a lot of people write down questions and they're going to go in the order of those questions no matter
Oh
what's being
yeah.
said. You're listening, and that's a huge part of interviewing is listening, because we had a consultant who actually told us, and this is a neat thing for you to think about, because it really changed the way I would talk with Alan. He talked about on ramps, and if Alan would say something, and this is said in almost every single post game show in the history of post game shows, second period they were a little flat, so the coaches went in, made the adjustments, and they came out and looked better in that third period, and then the analysts would keep going. Whoa, what kind of adjustments did they make? That's an on ramp. If he's going to say something as sort of throwaway as they made adjustments, well, tell us. You were a coach, you were a player. What were the adjustments after the second period that changed in the third period? Now he's going to get into the meat of coaching. Like, well, they did this differently, and clearly they did this differently. Okay, now we're learning something. And that came from listening and knowing what was important, what wasn't important to ask him, to push him on. Sometimes Alan would say something and I'd be like, that's not enough. Like, I need more than that. So listening and in addition to what we do to prepare for our shows, because Alan was also freakish in his preparation. He wrote down all the lines, stats within different colored markers for different stats that he had. Alan was wickedly prepared, and also like stupidly could pull stuff out of his head, because he literally, I think, watches every single hockey game. So I always used to be like, I don't know how you have the time in the day to watch everything, but you do. But in addition to what we would do, what our producers did, what our editors put together, because every piece of video has to match what we're talking about. And I was a freak on, don't just give me generic stuff. We're going to make this every video tell a story. Like, don't just say, give me some Alex Ovechkin file. Let's craft what shots we're using to tell the story of what we're telling. So, there's a lot of people that go into it that send emails and texts all day long and phone calls and, hey, what if we did this? I don't like that. What if we did this? Oh, I do. I was always big on, I'm going to give you 10 ideas. I don't care if you use one or all 10. Let's get the 10 best ideas we can come up with, and then do that.
Absolutely.
Do that really, really well. So it was always and if an editor edited something that was totally kick-ass and made the show better, you better walk back there and tell him nice job, because your show was better because of something he did. No one knows who that is. So you better, I used to tell interns that all the time, take the extra time, walk back, tell him nice job. It'll make him want to do it again the next time. So it's almost like a team. Everyone's got a role in the team, and everyone has to put the work in to make the show the best it can be.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that behind the scenes sort of. Once again, Rob Carlin, former host of Caps Pre and Postgame Live here on the Kirby on Sports podcast, if you're just tuning in. Rob, I want to get to this blockbuster trade that just occurred a couple days ago. The Blue Jackets and the Winnipeg Jets. The Blue Jackets traded Pierre-Luc Dubois and a third-round pick to Winnipeg for Patrick Lane and Jack Roslovic. This is a huge blockbuster trade, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on this?
It's huge. It's player for player. It's a hockey trade. We don't see them very often. You usually see draft picks or whatever come back, but Laine wanted out of Winnipeg. I mean, he's a 40, 50 goal scorer if he ever gets right. I love Pierre-Luc Dubois. I think he's a fantastic talent. That's a proven 20-plus goal scorer. Certainly top line center, if not your second center, depending on how good your team is. He's a hard worker. He's a tough player. I like the trade more for Winnipeg unless Columbus can somehow re-sign Laine. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I think that look, Dubois had to leave. He and Torts did not like each other. They did not get along. They tried. It wasn't working. And the fact that they were able to turn that into two disgruntled players from Winnipeg that have high-end, high ceilings, I think it was a great trade for both teams. I just like it more for Winnipeg right now because those guys would have left Winnipeg at the end of the season for nothing. Instead, they now might have the best centers down the middle of anyone in hockey.
But yeah, I mean, looking at this trade, I really think that was a great analysis there by that. And I want to get into some Caps hockey now. Most recently, they got fined $100,000 for breaking COVID protocol. I mean, I'm reading the reports here and I'm like, yeah, it's great that the NHL is cracking down, but do you think this was too harsh? Like, I'm reading reports. I'm not sure if you know more than me, but I mean, it just sounded like four guys in a hotel room.
I will say this. I look, they broke the rules, right? So they broke the rules. They had to get fined. They had to get suspended. They broke the rules. I don't know if you saw what Ovi's wife put out on social media. Yeah. And there's some validity to that. So you're telling me they can go to the arena, they could be in the dressing room, they could skate and sweat and hit each other and hug each other after goals and sit right next to each other on the bench. All of that is fine, but you can't go in the hotel room together? That's where they're drawing the line? So, yeah, I don't love it at all, but those were the rules. You know, it's like when you're growing up and you're like, so I got home at 11:30. Why do I have an 11 o'clock curfew on a Friday night? I don't know. I'm just telling you your curfew is 11 o'clock. So you broke curfew. So, it's just one of those things where, I did agree with Ovi's wife on that one. And I don't often follow what the wives are saying or, anything like that. I try not to get into that whole world, but I happened to read it and I was like, damn, she's not wrong.
Yeah.
This seems very Bush League to me. And especially when you're talking about the greatest goal scorer, arguably of all time, your top center, your top pair defenseman. I mean, you're talking about, and your starting goalie. You're talking about, four major players here. So it sucks, but look, they've gotten points despite it. So that's the beauty of the Caps. They're so deep that they can take those hits and still be able to get points.
Yeah, I mean, they all went into COVID protocols earlier when this first started to come out. Then it was reported that Samsonov tested positive for COVID. So all four of those players, Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, Orlov, and Samsonov, are out, which is essentially in a full 82 game season, 2 weeks. It's 4 games they've missed, but I mean, it's next man up mentality. And I think this goes back to Laviolette and the coaching staff. And just a deep bench, and they looked really, really good. I mean, yeah, some games went into overtime, but still, you have other people scoring. It took Ovechkin 3 or 4 games to record his first goal of the season. That says a lot that a lot of other players are stepping up for this Caps team. So it's not just Ovechkin, the star of the show, going out and showing his magic all the time.
Yeah, I think all the games have gone into overtime. It's crazy. The Caps are playing like one overtime and shootout game. They're trying to make up. They're going to end up playing a full 82 game schedule if they play overtimes every single night. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've looked pretty good. They've not looked great without those guys. They've looked great with those guys, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But look, goal scoring is never going to be a problem for this team. They've got enough goal scorers, that it's never going to be an issue that they're not going to be able to keep up. It's how many goals can you allow and how bad, there's still a lot of breakdowns, a lot of odd man rushes, a lot of breakaways. A lot of the same issues that we saw last year are creeping in this year. I just love, because on Sunday, I knew it was Championship Sunday. And I actually said this on my podcast that came out today. I did some errands around the house, and I was like, well, look, I'm blowing off the Caps game today. It's the NFC Championship game. Like, clearly I'm going to be watching that. I went out to the grocery store and got some food and chips and dip, whatever, to watch a game. And I came back, and a few minutes before 3, and I just turned on the Caps pregame show, and I was like, is that McMichael taking the lonely skate? And I was like, oh my God, he's making it. Well, there goes the first quarter of the NFC Championship game. Like, I got to watch the kid make his debut now. So, I love the fact that Laviolette said, screw it, I'm putting the kid in, and just threw him in a game. And he didn't look like he didn't belong. He played pretty well in just under 10 minutes. So I love the fact that despite the fact that those guys were missing, Laviolette put the kid in there rather than just throwing someone in off that taxi squad. He said, all right, let's see what this kid is made of in a real NHL game.
Yeah, the NHL actually tweeted a picture of McMichael trick-or-treating with a Caps jersey on in Canada. In sort of full circle, he's actually playing in a game. I did not see stats on McMichael. Did he get any goals or assists in that game from your knowledge?
No, he got off a shot. He had a good opportunity in that game. He took a penalty, so he got on the score sheet. But I missed his first shift somehow. I guess it was a quick shift, and I guess it wasn't a great shift. TJ Oshie made reference to it. He did like a little heel pick. But after that, I thought he was good. He tried to fire a shot that got deflected and went wide, but he came down on the wing and took a shot. And, like I said, he didn't look like he didn't belong. Oshie, after the game, said that he did some good work along the boards. And that's the stuff, if you want to impress your teammates, if you want to impress a veteran like TJ Oshie, sure, you could fire a shot. But if you're going to be in your first NHL game and go win a battle on the boards for a puck or chip a puck forward to create a rush, that's the little things that are going to impress the coaches, that are going to impress your teammates. And it sounds like he did a little bit of that. So good on the kid for going in there. And what I liked about what the coaching staff did is they made him look, it's totally makeshift lines. There's no Tom Wilson. The other 3 guys are out. So, but he put McMichael on the left wing on the second line with Lars Eller, who's an offensive-minded, responsible defensively, but an offensive-minded guy who wants to push the puck forward, and Richard Panik on the right wing, who's been off to not points-wise, but been very effective in the games and has offensive potential. I was like, good. If you're going to bring McMichael in, then put him on the second line and look to score a goal. Like, don't put him on the third or fourth line and ask him to be a checker. That's not what he is. So Laviolette knew that and put him on the second line and gave him at least some opportunities to show what he could do in the right way. And like I said, I saw enough that I want to see more.
Absolutely. So Tom Wilson went out with a lower body injury. Is that going to hurt the Caps, or do we still think it's the next man up mindset and they're still going to do what they do? I mean, obviously, as you said, they don't look great, but they're getting points even if they're going to overtime, and they're still putting up goals.
Yeah, I mean, Wilson's a big loss. Don't get me wrong, because it's little things. It's like the Garnet Hathaway hit that I was talking about that led to the Schultz goal. I think Wilson's had like 3 or 4 of those plays early where it was his forecheck that loosened the puck and led to a goal. So he doesn't get a stat for that. He doesn't get an assist for that. But the play didn't happen without Tom Wilson. So, I guess we're recording this on Monday night at 8 o'clock, and Tom Wilson spoke to the media today and said, he skated on Monday on the optional skate and wanted to stay out there, and he wants to play, but he's going to be smart because it is, such a quick season that he doesn't want to jeopardize anything. So we'll see whether or not he's in the lineup Tuesday against the Islanders. But yeah, you much look, if Kuzi's out, it's a huge loss. You kind of have to rejigger your centers. You're going to put Lars Eller up, Dowd goes up, Pinot goes into that fourth line. Is it the same? No, but you can make that work. No Ovi, no Tom Wilson changes the game. Tom Wilson's a game-changing type of player because of so much of what he does, besides the stats. So, hopefully he's not out too much longer, because the longer he's out, the more you're going to feel his loss.
Absolutely. And I also wanted to get your thoughts on the new coach, Peter Laviolette. On paper, he has been in multiple Stanley Cups. He has won a Stanley Cup. What do you think Laviolette brings to the team that sort of has changed the team's mindset so far?
Street cred, because of what you just said.
Oh, yeah.
He could point to his ring and say, I've already got one of these. A lot of the guys in that room have it, or some of the guys now at this point have won it, back in 2018. But this is the first coach that comes in and says, I've won one already. And I've proven that I know how to get to a Stanley Cup with a team. So I just think that he comes in and they all know his track record. They all know his history. So I think they had to make this move. I think it had to be Peter Laviolette for a number of reasons, but I think the biggest thing was they couldn't go out and, even Adam Oates, with all his accomplishments as a player, he's still a new coach. And there's still all right, well, I'm only going to believe it when I actually see it work. And with Laviolette, they've all seen the proof. They've all played against his teams in the past, and they know, it's a pain in the ass to play against a Peter Laviolette team. So as soon as they kind of figure that out, the interesting thing is Barry Trotz and Todd Reardon were much more of the quantity of shots over, or rather quality of shots over quantity of shots. They would rather not throw an easy shot on net that leads to an easy save and a puck getting, out of the offensive zone. Now, Peter Laviolette wants quantity. He just likes throwing the puck on net, much like the Justin Schultz goal that keeps coming back up in this conversation. But that was Schultz just throwing the puck on net, ended up going in. And, so they have to break their mindset of the last 6 years of being taught to play one way, and now have to learn to play another way. But, that it was a no-brainer hire to bring in Laviolette.
Yeah, I think it was one of the best hires so far. And with Laviolette, a new head coach, like you said, with street cred, what I believe is even better for the Caps, there is a veteran presence, veteran leadership. And the Caps brought in Zdeno Chara from Boston. And I mean, he spent his entire career with Boston and coming to Washington. I think that plays a huge part in this Caps hockey team, in this change, because not only you have Peter Laviolette, who has that street cred, you have the veteran leadership that helps a bunch instead of younger talent. I mean, younger talent isn't bad, don't get me wrong, but the veteran leadership really helps build a team, in my opinion.
Well, it's also who it is. I mean, this is Brooks Orpik, except he's a Hall of Famer. You know what I mean? Like, he does all the things that Orpik did. He's in peak physical condition. He works hard. He is a quiet leader, and he's also one of the best defensemen to play in our generation. So, like, for a number of reasons, guys just sort of respond to Zdeno Chara. Again, the street cred they know, and the fact that they've all played against him. And Tom Wilson said it's like skating into a brick wall when you hit him. Like they just know what he brings. It's still crazy every time I see him step on the ice. I'm like, I can't believe Zdeno Chara is on the Capitals. It's so nuts. But yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's just another look. They've got a room full of Ovi and leaders in all different ways. Ovi is, obviously the face of the franchise and the great goal scorer, and they go as Ovi goes, but he's not like he's not like the guy who's going to give you the rah-rah speech. He's going to yell in your face a little bit, but it's a different kind of leadership. Backstrom is a different kind of leader. TJ Oshie's a different kind of leader. Like they have a lot of Carlson's a different kind of leader. And in a way they lost some leadership in losing Braden Holtby. And I think bringing Chara in is just another one of those guys that you look at and you go, he's got the Stanley Cup. He's got all the respect. He knows how to play the game the right way. He knows how to keep his body right, how to, keep his mind right. So I think guys just it's easy to follow a guy like Zdeno Chara.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even touch on Braden Holtby. I'm watching Samsonov and Vanacek. They're looking pretty good. I'm like, man, maybe these guys are stepping up, and I mean, they aren't going to be as great as Braden Holtby was for Washington, but still.
In his prime. Holtby in his prime was great. I don't think Holtby's that guy anymore. So they might be better off. Vanacek looks pretty good. I mean, be better off with this combination.
I was like, I don't miss Holtby because these guys, I thought these two goalies would be young, inexperienced, but these goalies look pretty good. And it's like, Holtby did great things. That game 2 in the Stanley Cup final where he made that incredible save, which I was at Capital One for. It was incredible, but I'm like, wow, these guys are filling the shoes respectfully. I mean, I'm not saying they have a lot to learn, but I mean, still, I'm like, wow, I mean, I don't miss Braden Holtby because these guys are getting the job done.
Yeah, no, that's not the reason they've lost any of these games. Has not been the goaltending. Yeah. And, that's in and of itself, that's a huge win for them. And I don't think Holtby's been great with Vancouver. I've paid a little bit of attention, not a whole lot. They're not off to a great start. So I just think that, Holtby in his prime was great. Holtby gave this team a lot of, that I was in Vegas for game 2 in the save. And I could not believe, I just remember grabbing Allen by the suit jacket when and I was like elbowing him. I was like, he saved it. He saved it. Like I couldn't even believe what had just happened. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those cases where you just thank Holtby for everything he did for the franchise, everything he did in the community, the type of person he was, the type of player he was, and then you say goodbye because they weren't going to be able to afford him at that rate for what he is now. And I think you got 2 good young goalies. And if they need, look, they have Craig Anderson, like you feel comfortable putting Craig Anderson in the game. So they're probably better off with what they have now than had they brought back Holtby, which would have been bringing him back. You don't want to all of a sudden all get old. You know what I mean? Like you want to try and stack it as much as you can. And, their goalie position now is very, very young, and that's only going to, I think, help them over the next couple of years.
Rob, before we let you go, I want to get one final thought from you. The Stanley Cup run the Caps had, it was remarkable. You were there. You were covering it. Give me one of your best moments from that Stanley Cup run that you will never forget. I know there are many, but can you give us one or two that really stood out to you?
Other than that picture right there on my wall, holding the Stanley Cup deep into the night in Vegas, that was my favorite memory for me. I got to lift the cup up, but God, there were so many great memories on the way. The easy answer, other than the night they won the cup, that was the highlight of my career. Nothing will ever top that, I don't think. The easy answer is Kuzi's goal that beat Pittsburgh.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That was, first off, I was caught on camera doing the bird because I didn't realize the puck went in from my vantage point. We were at the arena and I didn't realize it. And Alan immediately jumped up onto the stage where our set was. And I looked at him and I looked back down, and then I saw Kuzi doing the bird. This all happened in a second. And I went, oh my God. And I just started doing the bird because I was like, he scored. I didn't even know what had happened. And then we get up on the set and we sit down in our chairs, and all these angry Penguins fans are leaving the arena, and they're all F-bombing us like crazy because they could see it from Washington. And I was like, bye-bye now. So long. Bye-bye. I was real tough because I had Alan sitting next to me. But it was like that moment of going, oh my God, they're going to win the freaking Stanley Cup. Like, I know Tampa's coming up next, but it always felt like if they could just freaking beat Pittsburgh, they would have won multiple Stanley Cups, but freaking Pittsburgh. And then they beat them. And I was like, oh my God, this might actually happen. And I heard a story at the start of the next season. I was talking to someone in the organization, and we were talking about the Cup run because it was still early in the next year, and we were all still on that high. And they said to me, this is interesting. I was told that one of the players on the Caps, after they beat Columbus in the first round, there was a discussion had, and these two people, and I'm not naming any names, but this guy I was talked to another guy and said, well, we got Pittsburgh now again. And the other guy said, we're beating them this year and we're winning the whole thing. Oh. And he went, really? He said, we're beating them this year. And again, I just got the chills remembering that story right now. But I remember when I was told that story, I was like, really? He's like, yep, there was just something different. There was this confidence that we were going to get it done, and they got it done.
I mean, were these players or just random guys?
I was talking to someone within the organization. A player said it.
Okay.
A player. Okay. So they were getting on the plane after beating Columbus. And someone within the organization said, we got Pittsburgh again. And the player said, we're beating them this year and we're winning the whole thing. That was crazy. And they did it. They did it.
That's awesome. Rob, well, once again, we can't thank you enough for the amount of time you've given us today. Once again, Rob Carlin, former host of Caps Pre and Postgame Live. Rob, can you tell us where to find your new podcast, the Capitol Building Podcast?
Yeah, wherever you download your podcast, just check it out. Capitol Building Podcast, CAPITAL, which on the day of the insurrection, I had a lot of people telling me that's not a great name of a podcast today. I was like, I know, I'm sorry. But so the Capitol Building Podcast, part of Blue Wire Podcast. So check it out. And as I say on the podcast itself, download and subscribe, leave a rating, write a review. It all helps get the word out there. So thanks for letting me plug that. And it was a lot of fun, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So this interview will be in its entirety on the Kirby on Sports YouTube page. We will play part of it on this episode. So stay tuned for that, the next episode of the podcast when that comes out. Once again, thanks to our sponsors, PM Plus Reserves, Shenandoah Primitives, and Chief Graphics. Once again, Rob Carlin of the Capitol Building Podcast and former host of Caps Pre and Postgame Live. Thanks so much for the time again, Rob. Stay safe.
You too. Take care.